Hey, long time no see. So you just watched probably the video about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. And if that wasn't too painful for you, that maybe you're here now to watch this one. So these are the 11 through 27. These are the amendments that came starting in the late 1700s. Amendment number 11 was passed in March of 1794, ratified in February of 1795. Right. So from all the way back then up until the most recent amendment, 27, ratified in 92. And we haven't had one since. And honestly, I'd be shocked if there was something that both parties could agree on to amend, or 2/3 majority, right, could amend in the Constitution in my lifetime. But the world's a crazy place. Who knows? So let's get started here. Just as a quick addendum, 11 through 27 are a mishmash of all different types of amendments. Some of them are strictly procedural. Some of them deal with civil rights or civil liberties. Just depends on what's going on at the time, but they are kind of a different style than what the first 10 are. Not necessarily less important, but slightly different. And they get increasingly complicated in their legalese. Even if you can't perfectly understand the language of the first 10 amendments, Amendment 12, for example, is a bit of a head scratcher at first. They're a little more difficult to understand, which is why I hope this video is helpful. So, number 11. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any law in suit, lawsuit or equity commenced or prosecuted against one. Here's the deal. I'm not even going to read the whole thing. This is the point. States can no longer be sued by foreign nationals, people of other countries, or by citizens of other states. So this amendment, this 11th Amendment, restricts the ability to sue states. That's what it does. Number 12. Number 12 is a big one. But what it does is the president and vice president are now elected on one ticket. A lot of stuff in there, but that's what it says. And this favors political parties, which is maybe not great. What Washington specifically warned against this. Consider that initially, prior to this amendment, Jefferson and Adams, two lifelong friends / bitter enemies / friends again, ran against each other for the position of president. In doing so, the winner became the president and the loser became the vice president. If we didn't have this amendment, you would have President Obama and Vice President, was it Romney and then McCain? I don't remember the order. McCain, then Romney. President Trump and Vice President Clinton. Well, I would have been there for that show. President Biden, Vice President Trump. President Trump, Vice President Harris. Oh, so that obviously creates some issues. And if you recall from the Constitution, the vice president is the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So the person that wins the presidency has someone opposed to them on some issues that's the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. That would create some interesting dynamics, and I can see why they'd want to tighten that up. So there you go. Number 13, a famous one and an easy one. No more slavery, right? Number 14, another famous one and much broader, Equal Protection Clause. But let's actually read through this one. I won't read through all of them to this extent. The 14th Amendment's a really important one. So, oh God, so 14th Amendment's really important right now for a couple of reasons. One, and a minor one. If you're pro-life, many people from the pro-life movement have wanted to use the 14th Amendment to argue that abortion should be illegal because of equal protection of the laws, right? So unborn babies would have equal protection of the laws, but it says right here, all persons born or naturalized. So it's a weird loophole, but you're an unborn person, not a born person. And so the equal protection law technically doesn't apply to you. Anyway, the one that is most interesting, I think, for our purposes currently is that President Trump's administration has recently tried to overturn birthright citizenship. There's a whole debate around this, and you're welcome to have whatever perspective you have on it. The reason why birthright citizenship was originally a thing was because when we formed an official country, right, there were people living here that weren't considered citizens. Some of them were considered property, the slaves. But you also had the native tribes, and they were a separate legal entity at the formation of our country. So the 14th Amendment in 1868 said all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. Remember the Fifth Amendment? Just the same language. Nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So the debate currently, and the Supreme Court ruled on this just in the last week or so. The argument was people that come here illegally and have kids, well, that's a problem. I'd actually argue it does cause a bit of a problem. So then what do we do about it? Well, the Trump administration said, well, let's interpret this, or we could interpret this language differently. So all persons born or naturalized. So if you're born here or you're naturalized legally through the process, you're a citizen. And maybe they want to change that to say, well, born here is no longer a viable option, but that would require a constitutional amendment or a legislative act that they don't have the power to do. So then they tried to do a different thing and said, well, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Well, if you come here illegally, for example, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of this place. Well, the court ruled, yes, you are. If you are physically present here, then you are subject to the jurisdiction. And that's how it's currently interpreted. So for any of you who are paying attention, this is immediately relevant in our present day. Okay, that's only section 1. Section 2, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed, but when the right to vote in any election for the choice of electors for President, Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive, judicial officers of the state, or the members of the legislature thereof is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age, the citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crimes, the basis of representation shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of male citizens shall bear the whole number of male citizens. 20. Okay, here's what this is all saying. This is changing the language of the 3/5 compromise. Maybe you recognize some of this language. Well, you should, because it's now each state, because slavery doesn't exist anymore, and because of Section 1, anyone who was a slave is now a citizen. So we count all the bodies in every state, and that's how you figure out your representation in the legislature. Additionally, every male inhabitant 21 years of age or older, except for those who participated in rebellion, because we wanted to punish the South a little bit more, because of course you do. Well, there you go. 21 years of age, and everybody is now a citizen. There's no non-citizens. Okay. And this was specifically, the language was designed to include the tribes that were existing here, as well as the enslaved population that is now incorporated into the political body. There's more to come, because this is going to be relevant to just in the last 5 or so years. No, okay, Section 3, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, but the Congress may by 2/3 vote remove such disability. What this is saying is if you fought against us in the Civil War, the Union, right, the United States, as we currently exist and as the split happened, yada, yada, we can kick you out or stop you from participating politically. But through an act of Congress, we can remove that limit, that penalty. Many people of the Democrat Party primarily, but I'm sure there were some Republicans as well, wanted to use this to prevent Trump from running for office because they wanted to make the argument that he was involved in rebellion or insurrection. The problem was they couldn't nail him on the intent element. But there are people that did engage in insurrection, and this would apply to them, and they will no longer be eligible for some of these offices. And then number 4, Section 4. This is the 14th Amendment's a big one. We won't spend as much time on other ones as we probably are on this. Section 4, the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payments of pensions, bounties for services suppressing insurrection or rebellion, should not be questioned. But that means all the northern states get their debt for fighting the Civil War paid. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion. So this is basically saying all the debts from the northern territories and states are valid and will be repaid, and all the debts incurred from the southern territories in seceding to the Confederacy will not be paid. There you go. No surprise there. Number 15, a nice, efficient, quick one. Black men get to vote. And it's specifically the language is shall not be abridged or denied on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So, which does open up voting not just to black men, but also to any other ethnic minority group that would have otherwise be considered outsiders. So potentially any Hispanics, Asians, or otherwise. Number 16, one of my least favorite. Income taxes. The federal government can now take some of your money because of the work that you do to fund the government. So there you go. Number 17, one of my favorite ones to discuss. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I have my doubts. So previously to 1913, in fact, the legislature, the House and the Senate, were the most democratic branches of government. We are not a democracy, but they were democratic in the sense that they were the closest to the people, and through popular votes, the members of Congress were elected to their seats. Senate didn't work that way. The initial structure had senators, like of the federal government, so Nebraska senators, Iowa, or South Dakota senators would be chosen, elected by their state legislatures. So I, Joe Schmo of Omaha, would vote for my state representative of my little district. And then that state representative, along with all the other state representatives in the Nebraska Unican role, would then choose 2 senators, and they would serve in the Senate. Why? Well, so what does 17 do? 17 eradicates that. And the 17th Amendment says, no, now all senators are elected exactly like all members of Congress are, popular vote, statewide. This changes the Republican system in a way that I don't particularly like. I think it's appropriate that, I'm giving you my 2 cents here. There's some editorial. Members of Congress are supposed to represent the interests of their immediate district, and popular vote is the best way to get that outcome. Senators are supposed to represent the interests of the entire state, the economic, the political, the agrarian, the transportation, the logistics. They need to understand all of those mechanics of the entire state. And I don't think that popular vote is the way to achieve those competencies. However, the state legislature, which regularly deals with these things on a statewide level, they are competent to understand all of the moving parts of state operation. And so I think they are better suited to pick our senators for the purpose that they serve. I'm obviously would have been in the minority at the time, and I'm sure I'm in the minority now. Not that many people think about the 17th Amendment, but that's what it does. 17th Amendment changes the election of senators from the state legislatures to popular vote. So think about it like this. We are right here, and our legislature at the federal level is right here. Similarly, we are right here, and our state legislature is equally there. Popular vote, popular vote. But then the state legislature would put the senators in place. And so there are these buffers because we are a republic, a representative republic, not a democracy. The 17th Amendment made us more democratic, if you like that. So that's what it does. That's what 17 does. 18, one of our dumbest amendments, abolition of alcohol. There was the suffragists, the women suffragists had a lot of stuff going on politically. They didn't have the right to vote until the 19th Amendment, and yet they got the 18th Amendment through. So it's interesting to see how political power can manifest even without the right to vote. Nonetheless, it caused a lot of trouble. Organized crime was rampant. My ancestors on the Italian side have been much maligned over the years. Got to make a buck if you can sell alcohol and run guns doing it, you know. So the abolition of alcohol made it illegal to consume, made it illegal to sell. Actually, the language is important. It's actually illegal to sell. Where's it at? District Amendment 18. Sorry for being so slow here, so sluggish. I got out of sorts. 1 year from the ratification of the article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation, well, there you go, is illegal. So consumption is not, but making it, moving it, or selling it is. So there you go. Speakeasies popped up everywhere. Organized crime rose. It wasn't just the Italians. There's the famous duo of Lucky Luciano and Maya Lansky, a Jew and Italian, running a very powerful crime syndicate. The Irish were in on it. Everybody everywhere was making and selling alcohol because there was great profit, because there was great demand. And it was the only amendment ever to be repealed, which is overall is a pretty good track record, I suppose. The 19th Amendment is the right for women to vote. The right to vote, rather, shall not be denied based on sex. So now men and women at parity are able to vote. So everyone of all colors, of both sexes, age 21 and above, are now able to vote. But that's not the end. We've got some more voting themed amendments coming up. Oh, could be I lost my little thing here. Number 20, the beginning terms for president and Senate in case of presidential death. So this is really just logistical, but it was important because what we want is we want a stable system, right? We don't want chaos. We don't want anarchy. We don't want confusion. And we specifically don't want confusion in terms of who's in charge. That's bad. It's a recipe for disaster. That creates power vacuums. And you don't like the people that want to fill in power vacuums. So what this just said is, here are the days where these things are determined. And if this happens at this time and there's this gap, then this person is in charge until such time as. So it just smoothed all that out. So there's never a question about who the executive power is during times of transition. It's a good amendment to have, a smart amendment. Number 21, drink up. 18th Amendment is now repealed. Unfortunately, the damage is done. In fact, many of the most severe encroachments, early encroachments on the Second Amendment, were a result of the 18th Amendment criminalizing certain types of firearms because they were being used by criminals selling, making, and transporting alcohol. Bummer. 22 is one that I didn't appreciate as much at first, but I actually have something to say about this. Presidential term limits is what it is. See, in the Constitution, a member of Congress serves 2 years, and they must be reelected very rapidly so that they are always close in contact with their constituents. Senators, on the other hand, do it every 6 years. We want them to have time to grow and learn the system, and they make those connections. It's not so important that they're representing this district of people. And so we give them a longer term. The president had no limits. In fact, the only reason why we ever operated on a 2-term standard was really just a gentleman's agreement based on what Washington did at the very outset. He could have served for life, most likely. So a lot of historians assume he could have. He was a giant war hero, and he was a wise individual, a thoughtful person. He was measured, and he was a competent leader. After 2 terms, he said, that's enough. It's someone else's turn. I'm going to step down. So he did. And so that's just the precedent that was set. But then in, let's see, the 22nd, right? So that would be in the, just after FDR actually died, 1951. There you go. So about 1951, there are different reasons why people think this one kicked in. Was it just to make sure that FDR served 4 terms? The only president ever to serve 4 terms. Didn't survive his last term. He carried us through World War II, and so he had a lot of support. Things were crazy. When things are crazy, people seek stability, and so if you can reelect the same person and just sort of keep the ship moving, that's sometimes preferable. He didn't do anything. Well, the New Deal was certainly controversial, and so some people think that they passed this amendment as a kind of thumbing of the nose at FDR and his legacy. Either way, 22nd Amendment just says officially a president can only serve 2 terms, not necessarily consecutively. President Trump's a good example. He served a term, he lost, he served a term. He will, at the end of this tenure, be ineligible to ever run again. And I've looked through this and I've talked to people that are more informed on it. There's just nothing there. There's no option for President Trump to try to seek a 3rd term. There's no legal way to do it. You've heard some of his supporters, his administration hint that they're working on something, but they're really not. There's nothing to work on. And here, let's just read the language. Let's be very, very clear about it. No person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. And no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected shall be elected to the office of president more than once. But this, so like you're vice president, the president dies, you step into the office before the 2-year mark and serve out. That's effectively 1 term. You could only then run 1 more time and win. Then you'd be ineligible. But what this basically says is there's just no other way. So 2 terms. Now, why do I point out that this is interesting? I had never thought about this, but is it a good idea that we put a limit on presidential terms? Most of you would just probably assume, well, sure, but why? Let me offer you some alternative perspectives. We want people to have the freedom to choose. Right? We don't want to take the choice away from the public to pick people that they want to represent them. And maybe it's not Trump, fine. But what about Clinton or Obama? Clinton was quite popular. Obama was popular too. Were they perfect presidents? Did I like everything they did? No, not by a long shot. But they did have broad popular support. Think about what was happening at the time that each of those men was in power. Clinton lived throughout the 90s. He served throughout the 90s. And in 2000, right, Obama was elected. Clinton was a popular president. He was a very, very tactful politician, a very sharp politician. He was pretty good about working across the aisle. If he had won, sorry, Obama didn't win until 08, Jesus. But Clinton, from 92 to 2000, he served his 8 years. He, if he was able to, could have run for a 3rd term. What would that have meant? Instead of Al Gore running against George W. Bush, President Clinton would have run against George W. Bush as an incumbent. And he would have stood a strong possibility of winning. And he would have been president during 9/11. The neocons that Bush brought into his administration would have not been in power. And so the entire neocon plan of spreading democracy through the Middle East and knocking off the Iraqi government, the Syrian government, finally, right, the Iranian government, those plans would never have the option to materialize because they wouldn't have been in power. That would have been massively consequential for the whole world, not just Americans. So it's worth considering. But I'll even go further. In 2016, at the end of Obama's 8 years, he was also widely popular. He would have run as an incumbent against Donald Trump. Now, nobody saw Donald Trump coming, and his presidential run and his style of politics was a curveball that no one knew how to hit, put it that way. But all things being equal, Obama was a very, very savvy politician, at least, and a very savvy debater. And where many others couldn't figure out how to deal with Trump, Obama stood as good a chance as any of them, and maybe a better one. What would it look like if Obama had served 3 terms instead of Trump, having been in power from 16 to 2020, rather? I say all this to say, maybe presidential term limits aren't the best idea, but I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. Sorry, I've taken so much of your time. Number 23, Amendment 23, DC now has electoral votes. Previously, the District of Columbia was this weird little quasi-sovereign unit, and it didn't have political representation at the federal level. And Amendment 23 fixed that, which is probably appropriate. Number 24, no poll taxes. One of the ways you can stop people from voting, if you can't use their race and you can't use their sex, you can punish the poor by charging money. And, oh, you can't afford to vote. Too bad. Off you go. No, you can't do that. That's illegal. So that's what the 24th Amendment is. The 25th Amendment, line of succession and resignation for incompetence. I'll spend a moment on this one. There are other U.S. codes that specify the line of succession from the president to the vice president to the Speaker of House, then the president pro tempore of the Senate, and then I think it goes to like the Secretary of State and then maybe the Secretary of Defense. That all gets spelled out somewhere else, but this lays the base work for that, the 25th. But there's another interesting element of the 25th Amendment that was recently brought up for both Trump and Biden. It's how do you get a president out of office when they don't want to go and they've not actually committed a crime? It's for incompetence. Now, a president could sign on the dotted line with an affidavit saying, I need to step down for a minute, medical reasons, who knows what. And then when they write and affirm that I am ready to do the job again, boom, they're back in power. There's an alternative. Either the vice president, Speaker of the House, and members of the cabinet, they can get together and agree you need to step down. Now, Nancy Pelosi wanted to use this on Trump in his first administration because she claimed he was insane. And I don't think he is actually insane in that way, but he's unpredictable at the least. But I don't think it was appropriate. And it never went anywhere. However, Kamala Harris had a very strong case to be made that President Biden was incompetent and incapable of holding his position. They didn't pull that trigger, but they could have. And the 25th Amendment allows for that. And then she would have been President Harris for some, period of time. The 26th Amendment allows 18-year-olds to vote. This happened just around the time of the draft and the Vietnam War. It's hard to send people to war to die in the draft if you don't give them a political voice to vote. And so they did. And then 27. No change to congressional pay while people, congressmen and women, are in office. So you can vote yourself a raise, but you don't get the benefit of the raise until you get reelected. Sorry, that was a long one, nearly a half hour. I do apologize, but that is a truncated version of what I would have delivered in the classroom. Talk again soon.